episode 4 of Beyond the Autism View with Soph Quill. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. So today we're going to be in for an interesting conversation. I'm going to start off and hand over to Soph to let her introduce herself, and then we'll take it from there whenever you're ready.
Hey, I'm Soph, my pronouns are they, them, and I am an inclusion business partner.
That's great. The first question is I'm going to ask you is, can you tell me about a bit of background of what you do for work?
Yes, so as I said, I'm an inclusion business partner within a large public sector organisation. I have worked in both the public and the private sector previously, and I think a lot of what I do currently, at least, is focusing on inclusive recruitment and making training more inclusive as well, looking at all of our current inclusion related training programs and trying to update those, and we'll go into detail about both of those things a little more later on. Then outside of work, I try and do a few voluntary inclusion related things as well. So this weekend, I think actually there's something called Festival of the Girl, which is about showing young girls 7 to 11 that they can do anything, anything which boys can do, they can do as well. So I volunteer with programs like that, and I think that's just as important as my paid day job, really.
That's great. That's great to hear, and I hope that goes well. Can you please tell me a bit on how you promote inclusion?
Yeah, 100%. I think inclusion is something which obviously it's part of my day job, and like I said, we'll go into that a bit more later, but I think promoting inclusion truly should be embedded into everything you do and every part of your life, and your hobbies, your interests, the conversations you have with people. I think it's about all of those things. So I think for me, outside of work, I'm a writer, I'm a poet. I love writing poetry, and I really I like writing about different experiences to my own, and that helps me to research and understand different perspectives. And then when I perform poetry, or hopefully one day when I publish a book, it will help others to understand those perspectives as well. But also within my own interests, I love history, absolutely love history. And when I'm learning more about history, I'm still trying to learn about those other perspectives. So about, I don't know, Black Tudors and World War II, and like the racial nuances within World War II, and how even on our side we had Black soldiers on D-Day and they weren't actually in any units where they could get any sort of medals or recognition. That was reserved for white soldiers, and instead they were just sort of resource infeeders, I suppose. And so learning about those things, and so when I have conversations with people about those topics, I can add that insight in and educate other people and talk about all of these amazing differences and things. And I think promoting inclusion is really about not just what I do in work, but about all of that and what we can all do and how we can all bring inclusion into our everyday lives and interests. And I would really encourage anyone to pick their own hobbies and interests and look at how they can learn more about inclusion within that thing. If you're interested in sports, for example, are you looking at teams from other cultures, what that sport's like in other places, what's it like for LGBT people within your particular sport that you're interested in? Is it harder for people who are neurodiverse to get into it, or is it not? What's it like for disabilities? I know that the Lionesses, I can't remember. Yeah, there's a Lionesses team for people who are blind that are currently doing really well in a competition.
Great.
And I think things like that should be advertised more, and people should learn these things.
Yeah, so my takeaway from that one there is just regardless of a disability, and especially relating back to autism, of where it's just like whatever is you're interested in, go for it. May need adapted, may need may need just a different approach put into it, but it can be done. Just it's having the toolkit to do it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So well, then the third one now is how do you recruit and provide training for like what have like you've done in the past?
Like both of these areas are absolutely massive within equity, diversity, and inclusion generally. We'll start with recruitment.
Go ahead.
In terms of, thank you. So in terms of recruitment, I started with building a matrix of research. So I created an Excel spreadsheet, and on the Excel spreadsheet, I made a tab for different parts of the recruitment process. So from advertising to job descriptions to interviews to onboarding, etc., etc. And on each tab, there was a breakdown of all of the protected characteristics under the 2010 Equalities Act, plus some other characteristics as well: military veterans, social economic background, carers. And for each of those, I researched best practice for that specific part of the recruitment process. And I got that research from accrediting bodies like Disability Confident, for example, subject matter experts, different research studies. So the first thing I did was compiling all of that information, because I don't know that all off of the top of my head.
Take you long to do.
Yes, and I think it's also one of those things where it's never going to be done. It's always going to be moving and changing, which is sort of the beauty of inclusion, is it evolves and changes all the time. So I think every time I'm listening to a podcast or watching a webinar, if something new is mentioned I haven't heard of before, I go back and add it in so that I always have this developed reference point.
So like and then so this is your next one. I'm going to go leading into the training. So the third question, and then we'll chat a wee bit more because it's sort of question one and two and three sort of link. So how do you recruit and provide training for sort of what you've done in the past?
Yeah, so I think expanding a bit more on the recruitment point, after building that matrix, it's about taking it to organizations and comparing it to their current recruitment practice, because that allows you to evaluate and see where the gaps are. So for example, it might be that currently you're only advertising on Indeed, for example, where if you start advertising jobs in places like diversity jobs, pink jobs, and different places, you're already going to start getting different candidates. And creating an action plan to really change the practices and the processes of a certain recruitment team, so that built into that process is the inclusive element. And then linked to training is making sure that the hiring managers and the recruitment team themselves are aware of why these inclusion things are important, what they are, and looking at things from a skills-based perspective. So I think for training generally, including inclusive recruitment training, for me, it's all about skills and activities, and that's the way we should be teaching people. Like I said before, inclusion changes so much over time. So if we just teach people information, well, in 2 years' time, maybe that same information isn't going to be correct. So what we really need to teach people is the skills to look at things from an inclusion lens that they can always apply to what they're doing. So if you're looking at inclusive recruitment, for example, it might be reading a job description and thinking about, okay, reading this job description, what about it might encourage certain people to apply? What about it might put certain people off? And you're always going to be able to do that if you have the skills. And also, oh, sorry, you wanted to say
Yeah, no,
something?
I was just going to ask a question for linking on, like within, say, for dealing, for like working with autistic individuals. Have you found that there's a different as everyone different style to go on towards to get to the end goal, cause
Yeah,
as a bit of like autistic thinkers are not quite black and white. They see the bigger
no,
picture. I'll let you
yeah,
carry on with it.
no, you're 100% right. It's definitely different for people with autism and different neurodiversities, and I think part of that is the ways in which you deliver training. So I've previously done guidance about accessible communication, and that includes things about presentations and training. So built into that are things like text in all capital letters. People love having text in all capital letters when it's title or the top of a slide.
Bold,
And some
screaming
people
at you.
exactly. And lots of people with autism are like, why are you shouting at me? Um, or the use of the color red, for example. Again, that's something where some people with autism are like, are you angry with me? Why are you using so much red on your slides?
I,
And while
I,
it differs,
yeah.
yeah,
I'll let you in the wee thing. I was at an autism congress about a month ago in Dublin, and as you're saying, it has actually popped up and what some of the feedback of the participants that were there, and it's like they're looking at the slide, and it's like, why is that shouting at me? And it's like,
yeah,
what? We're not. It's just it's there. It just may look like that, but it's all in the perceiving view of it, but it's having that ability for neurotypicals to decipher that they just see it as it is and they're not thinking
yeah,
outside the context, which they don't mean to, but it's just that's the thing about the thinking.
yeah. And I think it's about teaching neurotypicals that that's the way you can do things to make training more inclusive is learning how to make communication accessible and making sure that there's a quiet room on site in case somebody is overstimulated or um, allowing people to maybe wear headphones in training so there's not so much sensory overload from sound and having
And
when you're
also
thinking about
and also having dim lights and just being able to move
yeah,
and not being as rigid, because I find that myself coming to things. It's in the past it was like never could go to a conference. I never could do it. Or now I'm like not there if a duck's back, but still at the same time for myself I just do what I need to do. And that's a see as the autistic community like to just take it at their own pace. But to we need society to just adapt into that model instead of just not stay there. But that's not the way it's going.
no, 100%. I have a bad back, so I like to stand up and move around for slightly different reasons. But 100%, I'll be sitting at meetings or conferences or what have you, um, and for a while I'd just sit there in pain. And then now I just, like you said, I do just stand up, I move around, I might sway, I might go for a walk around, and I'm like, this is what stops me being in pain. This is what I'm going to do. And I think that should be how we look at things that everybody in meetings, training, or what have you, should just be able to do whatever they need to do to engage in the best way.
Yeah. Thank you. So did I ask you about the recruiting and providing training what you've done in the past?
Yes.
Oh yeah, sorry, I just didn't take it. So we have two more questions. So the fourth one is, what would be the best way to support someone who is autistic? And I ask this to everyone because it's not that it's a textbook answer. It's just it's what you think.
Yeah. In terms of the best way, I honestly think there is so many different things that I couldn't possibly fit into one answer. But I think I think what I'm going to talk about is workplace adjustment passports. So
Please go on ahead because that sounds interesting. The way it might be something I've heard before, but it sounds very interesting whenever you're ready.
thank you. So, what workplace adjustments are is essentially within the 2010 Equalities Act, people with disabilities are entitled legally to reasonable adjustments within their workplace and their work environment. And so in 2017, the House of Lords thought of something called a disability adjustment passport. Now, I prefer to call them workplace adjustment passports because it means that people who don't regard neurodiversity as a disability, or people with other characteristics that need adjustments as well, for example, carers, maybe parents, can benefit from the same system.
So just like an umbrella approach type of way,
Yeah,
instead of just having one niche.
yeah. I mean, if you're a parent, maybe on a Thursday you need to pick your child up from school and you don't other days of the week. Maybe if you're from a certain religious background, rather than having a bank holiday for Easter, you'd rather have off a different religious celebration and take that day off instead as your bank holiday, or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think an umbrella approach works really well. But let me explain what these actually are. So
Go ahead.
essentially, what a workplace adjustment passport is, it's a document that an individual goes through with their manager, talking about what adjustments they need to succeed in their role. And it could be that they've been in the organisation a while, or it could be they're a new starter. And this could include absolutely anything, depending on the person in question. But if we look at autism, for example, you could think about things like access to computer systems such as Dragon that support with certain tasks. It could be wearing noise cancelling headphones in meetings, recognizing that people might want to move around. It could be providing fidget toys, for example. Whatever it might be, between this individual and their manager, and you note it down and decide what can be offered. I'd always recommend, as a hiring manager, if you would like to refuse something on a workplace adjustment passport, that they contact their company's equity, diversity, inclusion team or their HR team to see if that department agrees, because we should be trying to say yes to as many of these things as possible.
Of course. And yeah, that's like it's having the two-way conversation to get to the right approach for the individual paramount, but also it doesn't say the company's letting them be a free for all, but it also just gives a steady ground for both sides.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. And the idea is, once this is agreed, it's recorded full stop. And this means that these adjustments are agreed and they're provided to this employee. But as the employee moves roles within an organisation, or if their manager changes, this passport doesn't change. It remains the same. So if you get a new manager or you're changing roles, you as an individual wouldn't then have to worry, oh, what's the new manager going to think? Am I going to have to tell somebody else that that I have autism? Are they going to think that I'm entitled to these same things, or are they going to try and take them away from me? Suddenly all those worries are gone because it's recorded, it's been agreed by the organisation, and that just stays with you over time. Yeah, and I think it's important to review passports anytime somebody has changes in their personal life, or regularly on an annual basis, just to see if there's anything more that somebody needs that maybe they didn't previously.
Yeah. So we're not like taking away of it, but it's just maybe something might be discussed in your first one, and you're thinking that's going to plan. We'll take this away, but I need to up this part here and
Yeah,
tweak it around. But that's the flexibility would sounds the best approach for it, because it's not that you're in work and you have it at the start when you start. You might be in the company 5 years and you're like, oh, no, you're in the company 5 years. We'll get rid of that. It as needs to be within future planning, long term, and sort of indefinite, but can be tweaked depending on roles and then service length.
yeah, 100%. It's about, like you said, being flexible and it being custom, because one person who has autism might need something completely different to someone else who has autism. Same with ADHD, for example. I have ADHD myself, and somebody else in my team does, but we're so completely different. So if you look at my email inbox, everything is separated into folders telling me what they're about. So in my inbox currently, in the main inbox, there's about 3 things, and those 3 things are my to do, and there's nothing else in there because as soon as I've done something, it's in a folder, and it's my way of working around things. But I know that colleagues I've worked with previously at other organisations who also have HDHD are very different, and maybe they don't have as many folders, and suddenly they have like 1,000 unread emails in their inbox. And neither way is wrong. It's just within ADHD, we're different in the way that we're doing things. And we both keep up to date and we're all on top of everything and we're all doing our jobs. We just do it in a very different way. And that's how things work. We can have the same diagnosis and still be different.
Of course, and then you've got the similarities of ADHD and autism, where it's like you've got somebody could be grand on one thing, then they add in a few, then they go and do something else. But it's not an umbrella approach, like all one, it's all different, as we
Yeah.
discussed earlier. And that's thank you very much. Have you any other questions for me?
Yeah, now you asked me just now, what's the best way to support someone who is autistic? Now I want to turn around that question and ask you the exact same thing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and I'll give you a best shot. No, so in that, this is for support wise, it's like going step by step, have your bigger picture, but also break down, break down the goal down to the smallest bit, take it bit by bit, give you the deadline, but have the deadline set. Don't give a task and say, I need this done whenever. If you just give the predictability of when the date actually needs, because it can put the focus on it to get it broken down. And then it's also having to be with quite going with the flow, but also at the same time needing to disappear when somebody's working. So it's like I would focus on what I'm doing, but then I would say to people, do not go near me for an hour. I need to get X, Y, and Z done. But then it's not saying I can't be approached. It's just it's having the time, flexibility, and the understanding of a two-way communication, but don't give the bare minimum detail. Needs needs straight to the point, but then be prepared for follow-up questions. May be answered originally, but it will take a while to process. But it's having the skill to just see from the outside that it takes a minute or 10 or depending on how long it takes. But then it's going from step by step to it and then getting the end goal. But don't just rush it and sweep it under the carpet and says, need that done now tomorrow. Be it done? I don't know. But then having to keep it going right.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that actually reminds me of my friend Dan. Um, he he's the one I mentioned earlier with the slightly with the inbox that had so many unread emails. And sometimes when we used to work together, I'd have things that I needed him to do, but I didn't want to stress him out. So we used to do, I can't remember what the actual word is, but in my head it's like parallel working, where we'd book time in our diaries and we'd go to a cafe, not in the office, so it's an informal environment, and we'd work next to each other. And he'd be doing in that time period whatever it was I needed for him for the deadline. And if he had extra questions, I'd answer his questions during that time. And I'd be doing something completely different and just answering his questions when he needed me. And I think for him specifically, that was a really good way of working because it meant that when he had additional questions, I was there in person, but it also gave him allocated time to do the task where he wasn't being interrupted and nothing else was happening because it was, we're not even going to be in the office. No one's going to interrupt us. We're going out.
It's having a sounding board and having the time to actually approach, say, a colleague, a boss, and having need you to double check this. Like I'm volunteered within a youth service, and Donegal. And that's I often say this to my colleague. It says, "What do you need? Tell me exactly what you need. If you don't give me the detail, exactly step by step of what you need, it won't be done." And I just
Mm.
having to tell them, "You need me, you come to me." But then it's having the understanding that it will get done, just might not be done to what is wanted or in the time limit of it, but it will get there. It's
Yeah.
having the good communication and the understanding from management of various organizations that you need to just take it step by step, slowly. Obviously, if a deadline's coming, um, fired together like a train and just keep it going. But then having the time to get it done nice and slowly, depending on how it is the best way of getting anything done, because you don't want somebody with autism overwhelmed and nearly on the edge of burnout or walking out. Nobody wants that.
No, I completely agree with you.
That's perfect. I'm going to end this recording now, and thank you very much. So
Thank you.